Have you ever wrapped your arms around a man and wondered what he's really thinking in that moment? What he's actually feeling, not just on the surface, but underneath the bravado, the silence, the smile. You see, for most people, a hug is just a simple gesture. But for men, a hug can be something far deeper. It can be a moment of vulnerability, of comfort, of being seen often without saying a word. A hug is often the only safe space he allows himself to feel. For many men, emotional expression has never been encouraged. It's been silenced, redirected, or even punished. From a young age, boys are told not to cry, not to show weakness, not to appear too sensitive. Over time, this messaging doesn't just shape how they speak, it reshapes how they feel. They build walls around their hearts not because they want to be distant, but because they think they need to be strong. So when you reach out and wrap your arms around him, it can be one of the very few moments where that armor drops, even if just for a second. In that space, something powerful happens. A hug doesn't demand anything from him. It doesn't need him to perform, fix, lead, or prove. It simply says, "You're enough just as you are." In a world that constantly asks men to be tough, reliable, and invulnerable, this moment of surrender is quietly revolutionary. A hug gives him permission to feel without being judged, to exhale without needing an explanation. He doesn't have to translate his emotions into language or logic. He just gets to feel. That's why your hug can be more than comfort. It can be clarity. It can remind him of the emotions he's been trained to suppress. It can reconnect him with the version of himself he doesn't often let the world see. When he feels safe in your embrace, it may be the only place he doesn't feel like he has to hold it all together. It's not that he lacks emotion. It's that the world rarely gives him space to process it. Your hug becomes that space. It's a silent message that says you don't have to carry everything alone. And here's the most surprising part. He might not even realize it fully himself. He might not have the words to describe what he feels, but his body knows, his heart knows. There's a softening, a slowing down. His breath might change, his shoulders might drop, his energy might shift. These are the cues that show he's let you in, even if he doesn't say a word. Because when a man truly feels safe, when he knows he's not being judged or fixed, that's when his real self emerges. A hug isn't just a physical gesture. It's emotional intimacy in its purest form. It bypasses all the noise, the overthinking, the walls, and it reaches something deeper. It tells him that he's not alone, even when he's silent. It tells him that he's still lovable, even when he's unsure of himself. And in a world that often equates masculinity with emotional detachment, your hug can be the one place he reconnects with his heart. In that moment, he's not protecting you. He's letting you protect him. For a man who is used to being the one who holds it all together, who carries the weight of others' expectations, responsibilities, and emotions, there's something deeply transformative about allowing himself to lean on someone else. Society often paints the picture that men must always be the rock, the shield, the unshakable one. So when he's in your arms, when he lets himself be held instead of doing the holding, that's not weakness. That's trust at its highest level. Most men don't grow up being taught how to receive comfort. They learn how to offer it, how to be the provider, the protector, the fixer. They take pride in being the one who offers strength in difficult times. But few are ever taught how to accept gentleness when they're the ones who feel vulnerable. So when you hug him and he leans into it, he's not just enjoying a physical connection, he's giving himself permission to be human. That moment is his silent way of saying, "Right now, I need you." What he feels in that moment isn't about needing someone to solve anything. It's not about words, advice, or solutions. It's about surrendering to the warmth of being cared for. And that's a powerful thing because men are rarely given the emotional space to surrender. They're told to fight, to endure, to be resilient. So when you hug him and he rests in it, he's allowing himself to drop the facade of invincibility and admit that he too gets tired. He too feels scared. He too needs someone to tell him, even without words, you're safe now. He may not even be fully aware of what's happening inside him during that embrace, but on some level, he feels a shift. There's a kind of healing that occurs when he lets his guard down like that. It might be subtle, like the way his breathing slows, or the way he wraps his arms around you just a little tighter, not out of possessiveness, but out of relief. In those few seconds, he finds a refuge, and not many people get access to that version of him. Letting someone protect him, even for a moment, is not something he does lightly. It means he trusts you enough to see the parts of him that the world doesn't get to see, the parts that are soft, unsure, or in need of reassurance. It's not a role reversal, it's balance. Because the strongest relationships aren't about one person always being the savior. They're about taking turns holding each other when life gets heavy. When he lets you be that for him, he's opening up to something deeper than connection. It's intimacy rooted in emotional equality. A genuine hug can express what words never could. In a world where so much is filtered, rehearsed, or hidden behind carefully chosen language, physical touch becomes one of the rare moments where honesty is felt rather than spoken. For many men, articulating emotion doesn't come easily, not because they don't feel deeply, but because they were never taught how to give those feelings a voice. That's why a hug can become the unspoken language of connection. It bypasses the mind and speaks directly to the heart. When you hug him, you're not just offering closeness. You're offering understanding without interrogation. You're saying, I see you, without needing an explanation. The pressure to explain, to justify, to define every feeling disappears. It's a moment where he can be raw, present, and emotionally real without the risk of being misunderstood. Words often come with fear. Fear of being judged, of not saying it right, of revealing too much. But a hug. A real, genuine hug is wordless truth. It doesn't require perfection. It simply requires presence. Think about the last time you hugged him and really felt him relax into it. That subtle shift in his body, that moment where his shoulders dropped, or he let out a breath he didn't even know he was holding. Those are the signs that the hug said what he couldn't. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe he felt disconnected. Maybe he didn't know how to ask for comfort. But when your arms found him, when your embrace wrapped around all the noise and pressure he carries, that gesture spoke volumes. And in that silence he found something louder than words, reassurance. Sometimes a man won't say, I need you. He won't say, I'm scared, or I'm overwhelmed, or I feel alone. But when he pulls you in and holds on just a little longer, that's his way of saying all of those things. He's not being distant, he's reaching out the only way he knows how in that moment. And when you respond with stillness, warmth, and presence, he receives something he might not even fully understand, permission to feel. A hug can be the safest place he knows. It's the space between two people where masks fall away and walls come down. It's where he can stop performing and just be. It reminds him that love doesn't always need to be explained. It can simply be felt. And in a relationship, those unspoken expressions become the glue that holds everything together. When words fail or emotions become too big to name, a hug is what reminds him that he's not alone, that he's held, and that his heart is understood in ways he didn't even know he needed. He feels seen, accepted, and understood in complete silence. In that one quiet moment of physical closeness, he experiences something that often escapes him in everyday life, a feeling of being fully recognized without needing to explain himself. For many men, the world doesn't often pause long enough to ask how they're really doing, let alone make them feel emotionally safe. They're expected to carry burdens quietly, to push through without complaint, and to appear fine even when they're falling apart inside. But a simple hug, when it's real and given without expectation, can interrupt all of that. It becomes a rare experience where he's not being measured by what he provides, solves, or fixes, but by the mere fact that he exists and matters. In that stillness, there's no pressure to perform. There's no need to find the right words or pretend everything is okay. It becomes a moment where he's allowed to just be a human being, with flaws and fears, and still worthy of love. Your embrace doesn't ask him to be more. It doesn't try to fix him. It doesn't rush his healing or question his silence. It simply says, "I'm here, and I see you." And for a man who's used to being strong for everyone else, that kind of unconditional presence is more powerful than any speech or conversation. He may not express it openly, but internally he feels the shift. There's something grounding about being held in stillness. It slows down the noise in his mind, settles the tension in his chest, and softens the resistance he's carried for so long. He begins to feel that maybe he doesn't have to hide so much. Maybe he doesn't have to carry it all alone. Maybe in this one space with you, he's finally allowed to be soft. That's not just emotional comfort, it's emotional recognition. It tells him that he's not invisible in his struggle, and that someone truly sees past the exterior he shows the world. And this kind of recognition doesn't come from grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It's in the quiet, in the consistency, in the way your arms don't demand anything yet still offer everything. He feels the difference between a hug that's routine and one that's intentional. He senses when your embrace isn't just a habit, but a choice, a conscious decision to connect with him on a level deeper than surface love. And that's where he begins to feel safe. That's when his body starts to trust that your presence isn't conditional, that your care doesn't come with a scoreboard or a requirement to be emotionally perfect, to be accepted without having to fight, for it is a gift. Most men don't even realize they're missing until they feel it. But once they do, it changes something inside them. It creates a memory, a reference point, a quiet anchor they return to mentally long after the hug is over. In that silence, in that stillness, you give him more than just comfort. You give him a feeling of emotional home. That embrace may be the rare moment he lets go of his emotional armor. For most of his life, he's been taught to protect himself, not just physically, but emotionally. He's been trained to guard his feelings, to not appear vulnerable, to keep his emotions locked behind layers of control. The world often doesn't give men the space to feel safely. They're expected to keep moving forward, to suppress what hurts, to laugh off what scares them. And over time, they get so good at building emotional armor that even they forget what it's like to live without it. But when you hug him, and he feels truly safe in that moment, something inside him softens, something opens. It may not be visible from the outside. It may not look like much. But inside, that hug becomes a quiet rebellion against everything he's been taught about being a man. For a few seconds, he's allowed to lay down the weight of being the protector, the provider, the stoic one. He can let go of the performance, the pretending, and just exist as he is. No defenses, no expectations, no pressure to prove anything. That feeling is rare, and because it's rare, it's sacred. When a man truly lets go in someone's arms, it's not because he's weak. It's because he finally feels strong enough to be vulnerable. That kind of strength doesn't come from ego or toughness. It comes from trust. It means your presence has created a space where he doesn't need to defend himself, where he doesn't need to be on alert. And when that emotional armor begins to fall away, what you witness is not just a physical closeness, it's emotional intimacy at its purest. He might not talk about it. He might not even realize it's happening, but his body knows. His mind starts to unclench. His breath deepens. His muscles release the tension he didn't even notice he was holding. These subtle shifts are his way of saying, "I feel safe here." In that safety, he reconnects with parts of himself he's been keeping buried, his fears, his sadness, his softness. And instead of hiding those parts, he's allowing them to exist in your presence. That's one of the most intimate gifts he can give. This release doesn't mean he's broken. It doesn't mean he's dependent. It simply means he's human. And when a man finally feels like he can be fully human with someone, not just strong, but also soft, it builds a level of connection that words can't replicate. That hug, that moment, becomes a place where he reclaims a version of himself the world taught him to hide. You're not just holding his body, you're holding his truth, and that truth has been longing to be held for a long time. Your touch reminds him that he doesn't have to be strong all the time. So much of his identity may have been built around the idea that he must always have it together, that showing weakness means failing, that expressing fear or sadness is something to be avoided. From a young age, he's been silently handed the message that his value lies in how steady, how controlled, how unfazed he can appear in the face of life's chaos. And so, he learns to tuck his feelings away, bury his struggles, and put on a face of resilience, even when the inside tells a very different story. But when your arms wrap around him, when your hands rest gently on his back, all those invisible demands begin to fade. In that one moment of touch, he doesn't have to lead, fix, or pretend. He gets to simply feel, without performance, without shame. Your embrace tells him something the world rarely does, that it's okay to let go. It's okay to need support. It's okay to not have all the answers. He may not admit it out loud, but there are days when the pressure feels overwhelming. Days when he questions whether he's enough, whether he's doing enough, whether he's truly seen beyond what he provides. And your touch, so simple and yet so profound, becomes a quiet but powerful reminder that he doesn't need to carry it all alone. What he feels in your presence isn't just comfort, it's permission. Permission to be real, permission to be messy, permission to take off the mask for a while and be met with love instead of judgment. That kind of permission is rare, and he doesn't take it lightly. He may not verbalize the shift, but his soul registers it. A part of him exhales in your arms in a way that it can't anywhere else. Because in that space, he's not being asked to earn your love through strength. He's being reminded that he's worthy of it exactly as he is, even in his most unguarded state. There's healing in your presence that goes far deeper than words can reach. That healing doesn't come from trying to fix him or telling him what to do. It comes from the way you hold him without expectation, the way your hands say, "You don't have to be anyone but yourself right now." That message, though silent, reaches places within him that haven't been touched in years. It reassures the part of him that feels like he always has to be the strong one, the reliable one, the emotionally stable one. In your embrace, he begins to rewrite the story that strength means emotional isolation. He starts to understand that real strength includes knowing when to rest, when to ask for help, and when to simply receive love without condition. And that realization doesn't just change how he feels in the moment. It slowly begins to change how he sees himself. Your touch becomes more than just affection. It becomes an anchor, a moment of truth that says, "You're allowed to be human here.